Billions of people have one. Nations go to war over one, and you've probably never stopped to wonder where it actually came from. For most of human history, armies had no flags. Soldiers on a battlefield were indistinct, a mass of bodies with no way to tell friend from foe at distance. The earliest known standards appear in ancient Egypt, around 3,000 years before the Common Era, not cloth at all, but carved wooden or metal emblems mounted on poles. Egyptians raised animal heads, feathers, and sacred symbols on long staffs, carried high so soldiers could see them across the chaos of battle and know where to rally. The Assyrians, the Persians, the armies of the ancient Near East all adopted the same idea. A pole with an emblem on top, carried into the fight as a rallying point. By the 2nd century before the Common Era, the Roman army had refined this into something more sophisticated and far closer to what we recognize today. Roman legions carried a vexillum, a rectangular piece of cloth suspended from a horizontal crossbar, often red or purple, embroidered with the legion's name and number. That word, vexillum, is the root of vexillology, the formal study of flags, a term coined by American scholar Whitney Smith in the late 1950s. Halfway around the world, China was developing something the Romans didn't have: silk. Chinese commanders carried silk banners into battle, likely as far back as the Zhou dynasty. Silk was lighter, more colorful, and more visible than carved wood. It caught the wind, it moved, and moving symbols command attention in ways static ones never can. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, organized military symbolism fragmented. But the need for battlefield identification didn't disappear, it evolved. By the 11th century, European knights wore full metal armor that made them completely unrecognizable. A knight charging at full speed could easily be killed by his own side. The solution was heraldry, bold geometric symbols painted on shields and sewn onto banners, unique to each noble family, readable at a gallop from 50 paces. The Bayeux Tapestry, documenting the Norman conquest of England in 1066, shows soldiers carrying pointed banners with crosses and geometric designs, early flags in everything but name. When Pope Urban II launched the First Crusade in 1095, the cross became the defining symbol, creating a new visual language of allegiance shared by armies of every participating nation. But it was at sea where the flag became truly indispensable. Two ships approaching each other had one urgent question, and they needed an answer before they were within cannon range. A flag, visible from miles away on a clear day, was the only solution. By the 13th century, maritime nations were developing recognizable emblems flown from their masts. The oldest national flag still in use is Denmark's Dannebrog, a white cross on a red field. Legend says it fell from the sky in 1219. Historians doubt the story. The flag is real. That Scandinavian cross design, offset toward the left, became the template for the flags of Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Iceland, a family resemblance visible to this day. England's Cross of St. George, a red cross on white, appears in records from the 13th century, worn by English soldiers partly to distinguish them from French allies in confused medieval campaigns. In the late 16th century, Dutch rebels fighting for independence from Spain flew a horizontal tricolor, originally orange, white, and blue. The orange faded over time to red, producing the modern Dutch flag. That Dutch tricolor was the first of a format that would sweep the planet. 3 bands of color, clean and simple, readable from a distance. Governments would copy it for centuries. On June 14, 1777, the Continental Congress passed the flag resolution. 13 stars and 13 stripes, representing the original colonies of the United States. Legend credits Philadelphia seamstress Betsy Ross with sewing the first American flag. The story can't be verified from contemporary sources. It surfaced almost a century later, but Ross did make flags professionally. As new states joined the Union, stars were added. The American flag changed shape 27 times. The final star, added in 1960 for Hawaii, brought the total to 50. In 1789, revolutionary Paris added red and blue to the white of the royal standard. The result was the French tricolor, one of the most influential symbols in political history. The tricolor didn't just represent a nation. It represented an idea: liberty, equality, fraternity. For the first time, a flag was explicitly ideological, and other revolutionary movements noticed. Over the 19th century, Italy, Belgium, Romania, Germany, and dozens of other nations adopted tricolor formats directly inspired by France. The flag had become a political statement as much as a military tool. Maritime signal flags developed on a separate track. By the early 19th century, ship captains had no standardized way to communicate complex messages across open water. In 1817, Captain Frederick Marryat of the British Royal Navy published a code of flag signals, allowing ships to spell out messages letter by letter. Merchant ships adopted it widely. By 1857, the British Board of Trade published the first international code of signals, allowing ships of different nations to communicate without sharing a spoken language. A flag starts as woven fabric, historically wool, later cotton, now almost universally polyester, which resists fading and holds color under UV light better than any natural fiber. The colors are precisely defined. Many national flags now specify exact Pantone color codes to ensure that a flag printed in Tokyo matches one printed in Toronto. Flags have precise proportional ratios specified by law. Nepal's flag, the only non-rectangular national flag in the world, has a geometric construction spelled out in the country's own constitution. The Union Jack is a merger of three crosses: St. George for England, combined with St. Andrew for Scotland in 1606, then St. Patrick for Ireland added in 1801. European colonial powers planted their flags on every continent, and when colonies became nations, many kept elements of their colonizers' flag. Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji all still feature the Union Jack. In 1947, the newly formed United Nations adopted its own flag, a pale blue field with a world map surrounded by olive branches, designed to belong to no single nation. On July 20, 1969, the Apollo 11 crew planted an American flag on the lunar surface. NASA engineers had added a horizontal wire to keep it extended in the airless vacuum. 5 American flags are believed to still stand on the moon, but by most estimates, decades of unfiltered solar radiation have bleached them completely white by now. By some estimates, the global flag industry produces over 1 billion flags annually. China manufactures the majority of them, including, notably, a large share of American flags. Flags survive because they do something language cannot. They communicate identity in an instant, one glance, from any distance, in any language, across any cultural divide. Research suggests that symbolic objects tied to group identity can trigger the same neural responses as direct personal threats, which is why people fight over flags in ways they rarely fight over words. There is a quiet paradox at the heart of all this. The flag was invented to prevent confusion on a battlefield. Today it sometimes creates the very conflicts it was designed to survive. From an Egyptian emblem raised above a river battle to a bleached nylon rectangle on the surface of the moon, the flag has traveled about as far as any human idea has ever gone. What began as a practical question, how do soldiers rally, became one of the most emotionally charged objects on Earth. Not what it's made of, what we decided it means. This is Origins. Subscribe and come back tomorrow. There's a new origin every single morning.